Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the upcoming book, How to Stop Scrolling. No other than Miss Ruby Ryba.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. Really excited to
Well,
chat.
yes, welcome to Book 101, Miss Ruby. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. My name's Ruby Ryba. I'm a former high school math teacher and mom of two little ones. And I've had a relationship, or I've thought about the downside of technology as long as I've had a relationship with it. And really, in the past year or so, with phones just becoming so ingrained in our everyday life, I started to think about what do people need to do to exist, really, and to get to make intentional choices. And so, what started as just kind of a personal interest project turned into something that I realized could be of service to other people. And that's what brought me to writing this book.
Miss Ruby Riba, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. What makes this book different from other digital detox guides?
Sure. I think there's a lot of information out there on the effects of technology, of social media, but there's less out there when it comes to practical steps in terms of what we can do. We've heard that with the onset of social media, teenage girls' anxiety, depression, and self-harm have more than doubled. But what do we do about that? How can we use technology because we have to, um, and let it enrich our lives, um, and still make our own choices. And so I think there's a lot in terms of what's out there in terms of the effects. There are some more rigid protocols, um, but what I'm trying to do is help people have more awareness so that they can make personalized choices on what works for them rather than following a series of steps that are cut and dry that I've said this is the only way to use technology because technology use is so nuanced and individualized, so there is no one size fits all.
Awareness, people, awareness. So, Ms.
Exactly.
Ruby, let's talk about understanding the problem of the book itself. How would you define phone dependency or digital addiction in today's world?
Yeah, I think the number one issue that I see is for the person using the technology to not be in control of their technology use. There's nothing wrong with using technology, but not getting a say in how you interact with it, I think is the issue. And again, that's why it comes back to awareness and choosing how you interact with it instead of letting the phone decide for you, which is often the case when you're scrolling, for example, and you have no choice as to what the next video is that you're going to see, right? You have no control over the content that you're consuming. You have no control over how long you're going to be sitting there scrolling. So, my goal is to put people back in the driver's seat so that they are making those decisions of what they're consuming, for how long, why they're using their phone, and for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the people that are creating the content or the items that are up for purchase.
Very well said, Miss Ruby. Very well said. What are some common signs that someone might be too reliant on their phone?
I think when someone's too reliant on their phone, there's a lot of telltale signs. One is the inability to function without it. So, a common question that you can ask yourself or others is how would it feel right now to go on a 30-minute walk without your phone? So, does that idea make your skin start itching? Or does it make you feel a sense of relief because you feel so free? Or is it no problem? So hopefully the goal is to get to that third bucket. But if you're having a lot of feelings about possibly detaching from your phone, that's already showing a bit of an issue. Other examples might be that it's the first thing you reach when you wake up. It's the last thing you're on before you go to bed. These are all indicators that you need it throughout your day.
Totally. People sometimes their day is not complete without their phone. So one
Totally.
of the sign. How does constant scrolling affect our mental health, relationships, and productivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at it. There's the opportunity cost of what you're missing out on in real life, and then there's also the content that you're consuming itself. So, if you're scrolling for an extra hour a day, that's 7 hours a day of scrolling, 365 hours of scrolling a year. What could you be doing with that time? You can learn a programming language. You can read something like 50 books. So, first, there's the opportunity cost. But then also, what are you doing while you're scrolling? So, like I was saying earlier, you often don't have a choice as to what content you're consuming. So, before you're winding down for bed, you might see graphic news stories or like really sad stories. You might see violence, just not what you were anticipating. So it can also really affect that. In terms of social media, there's also the comparison. People love to talk about how social media is the highlight reel, right? And we all remind ourselves, don't worry, social media is the highlight reel. I know that, and therefore I am mentally safe using social media. But we actually need to go one step further because what does it mean that we are looking at a highlight reel? What it means is that we are often engaging in something called upwards comparison. Upwards comparison is when I look at what I have and when I look at what the other person has and they have something more or better than me. And upwards comparison is always going to be what happens when we're looking at someone's highlight reel while we are sitting in our pajamas. And upwards comparison is terrible for your self esteem. The amount of upwards comparison versus downwards comparison, which can make you feel better about yourself, is is very unnatural based on the fact that we use social media so much. So there's the effects themselves because of the phone use, and then there's the opportunity cost of what you're not doing in real life, whether it's skills based or relationships. Relationship quality is supposed to be one of the best indicators of long term health. And that's one of the things that we're sacrificing when we're using our phones for so long.
Ms. Ruby, let's talk about the solutions and strategies. What are some of the first steps someone can take to break free from compulsive scrolling?
Yes, sure. If I could only choose one thing to tell someone, it would be to make sure that your phone is not sleeping in your bedroom with you. It should not be on your bedside table. It should not even be in your bedroom. It's so easy to reach for the phone first thing in the morning if it's on your bedside table. So really, my if I can only change one behavior about someone, it would say, please charge your phone in the kitchen, in the bathroom, whatever. Because a lot of it is not about willpower or strength or whatever. It's just the fact that it's there. So I don't sleep with my phone on my bedside table, so I don't scroll in the morning. I do that all the time. A couple months ago on a Friday night, I was really tired. I fell asleep with my phone on my bedside table. Guess what I did when I woke up? I scrolled. Okay. I'm the lady that's writing about how to stop scrolling, but if it's there, I'm going to do it. So don't make your life hard for yourself. Don't put it on your bedside table. There are other things we can do though. There's also grayscale. I don't know if you've heard of grayscale, but it's basically turning your phone into black and white. And a pretty sizable study has shown that putting your phone on grayscale can reduce phone time by 50 minutes a day, because the phone is so pretty and fun and colorful. The fact that notifications are red because humans, when we see red, we think blood. The live icon on this podcast is also red because we want people to click on our podcast. Red is eye catching. By turning those things off, we can be a little bit more rational about our phone use. So, bedside table, grayscale. One, I'll sneak in one more, would be focus modes, the use of do not disturb, etc. And to really personalize those, a lot of people don't use do not disturb because they say, if I put my phone on do not disturb, I'm going to miss important calls. Well, you can go into the settings of do not disturb and say, silence all calls except from this person during these times. So doing that can really maximize being able for someone to be able to get a hold of you if they need to, but not getting notifications from like Pinterest, right? I've never ever needed a notification from Pinterest. Um, so those would be some of my
How
suggestions.
so, Ms. Ruby, how important is mindfulness in this process of digital empowerment?
So important. I mean, interestingly, our phone use is really kind of a result of what's going on internally, you know? So if you are going through periods where you're feeling anxious about a life change, you might notice that you're checking your phone a lot more frequently. When you are feeling down or depressed, you might be going to your phone for comfort, or you might be going to social media um, for reassurance, you know? And so understanding what's going on inside is really helpful. And it can also help you to cut yourself some slack sometimes, because there will be times that you're more stressed out or tired or burnt out, and you might be using your phone a little bit more, just like you might not be eating as healthfully as you usually would. And that's okay. But again, it comes down to you understanding what's happening and you sort of giving the okay, the that that behavior is occurring.
Ms. Ruby, let's talk about the science and research of the book. Did you consult any psychological or neuroscience research when writing the book itself?
So I did what's called secondary research in that I read a lot of books on and some studies on phone use itself. I myself, I did not conduct any studies.
So, how does dopamine play a role in our scrolling behavior?
Sure. So dopamine is a really high scrolling, sorry, is a really high dopamine, fast dopamine activity. Um, there's a researcher, Dr. K. He talks about dopamine in a way that I found really helpful. He talks about how when you wake up in the morning, we have a set amount of dopamine that we have for the day, and you can use it up quickly or you can use it up slowly. And so if you do, say, 4 hours of work, then at the end of the 4 hours of work, you feel really good because you got that work done, right? And then you go and you scroll for 4 hours after that. Not great, but let's say you do. And it's kind of like whatever, okay? However, if you reverse the order of this and you do the scrolling first, you do 4 hours of scrolling, and the scrolling is like a very high dopamine um, activity, you're going to use up all of your dopamine so that afterwards, when you do 4 hours of work, you don't really feel any different. And so that is really key. And that also relates to why I advise people not to use their phone first thing in the morning, because you can use up that precious dopamine that can be used in other activities, more slow dopamine. So order matters and timing matters. So as much as possible, you want to do slow dopamine things early in the morning. So I'm writing my book, scrolling and then writing is like the worst thing ever, because scrolling is so fun. And if I go from that to a blank page, like there's no way I'm going to get anything done. Um, so, so, so instead, before writing, I might want to do something like washing the dishes or taking a walk outside, because going from that to writing actually feels exciting. So order matters, and the fact that we have a finite amount of dopamine every day is also really interesting, and I think something that can be helpful if people know about.
Is there a difference between phone dependency in teens versus adults?
That's a great question. My book is geared towards adults. Um, so I haven't done a lot of research into that. That being said, until you're 25, your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. And so teenagers have a lot more difficulty with impulse control. They're also going through so many hormonal changes. And so I can only see it as more dangerous for teenagers.
Ms. Ruby, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Yeah, I think short term, I want to help people that want to make a change. I think there are a lot of people that want to make a change, but they don't know where to start. It feels very overwhelming. I also think that there's a lot of shame in this field, not intentionally, but it's really easy to blame ourselves and say, oh, why am I using the phone so much? Why did I scroll so much? Why did I turn Instagram on so early in the day? And we forget about the fact that there are active, powerful forces at play that are just trying to grab our attention the whole time. So, my goals are to remind people that they're not alone, that this is challenging, but it is totally doable if you make an intentional commitment. Um, and long term, I want to continue to increase awareness. Because there's been so much movement and progress, of course, in the technology space itself. And so now we have to play catch up in terms of the technology defenses, if you will. So I consider myself part of that movement.
Good luck to your goals, Ms. Ruby. And what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their own book?
Writing your own book. I think being curious is what really helped me. I started out by wanting to help others, but the more I want to learn, the more I know so that I can help others. And so my curiosity is what has really driven this project.
Well, thank you for your advice, Miss Ruby. Let's talk about your writing journey itself. What was the most challenging part of writing How to Stop Scrolling?
As it's my first book, I definitely think there was some imposter syndrome. Who am I to be writing this? I don't have a PhD in psychology. Who's going to listen to me? Um, And so I think that's something that you can only continually squash by doing the thing. It's not that you're able to do things because you have confidence. You have confidence because you're able to do things. And so I just keep showing up and I'm just going to prove myself wrong. And I think the imposter syndrome slowly fades away.
Certainly. So, how can someone reclaim their time and attention in hyper-connected world?
I think boundaries are really important and to think about what your values are. So, in terms of a hyper connected world, what are your goals? How often do you want to connect with people? Who do you want to connect with? Um, we don't need to be responding as soon as notifications come in, but everyone has different thresholds of how frequently they feel like they should respond. Like I'm someone that feels comfortable getting back to someone within 24 hours, but I've spoken to clients that say, no, 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 I need to get back to people sooner than that. That's fine, but pick your cadence and then stick to it. And don't let the barrage of notifications control you and decide for you when you'll react with the technological world. So it's about you deciding and then sticking to that.
Certainly. So, what does digital empowerment mean to you?
Great question. I think it means that we use our phones as a tool that serves us. So it goes back to what are my values and how can I use technology to meet those values, So technology is great. We all know that, it's what we're using to communicate right now from the US to Canada. But just making sure that you are actually getting out of it what you want. A common phrase or question that I like to ask myself when I'm scrolling is who's profiting? So while I'm looking at a certain video, am I enjoying this enough? Or am I just scrolling mindlessly and is the influencer or the company just profiting off of my attention? So, really, just being in control of when and why you're using technology is what I would call digital empowerment.
Yes, indeed. When and how you use your phone. Very well said, Mr. B. Beautifully articulated. Did writing the book deepen your own commitment to reducing screen time?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I just find it to be a really fascinating topic. And the more I learn, the more I can put a lot of these things into practice. So I really think writing is one of the best ways to learn something in depth. And so it's definitely.
Definitely, people. How to stop scrolling coming soon. So, before we wrap up our discussion today, Miss Ruby, I'm inviting you to please do listen to one of my audiobooks. People, audiobooks, Book 101 Review Volume 3 Suggestions, Book 101 Review Volume 2 Selected, and Book 101 Review Volume 1 Highly Recommended. These are the products of my first season on Book 101 Review, one of my self help books, Threads of Existence, Weaving the Tapestry of Life, and Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying, and Life is Too Short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. And my climate change book, Earth Fever, Unraveling Climate and Our Race to Restore Balance, available on Audibles and one of the best sellers. So, Miss Ruby, what advice or how have readers responded? Any success stories that stood out in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant, but everyone that I've worked with has seen a big difference. But I actually think that that's not thanks to me. I think it's because it shows that if you're just a little intentional, you can make a change. Most people assume that they can't make a change before even trying to start. They already feel defeated. So, my message would be that if this is something that you're interested in changing your phone use, you can do it. You just need to be intentional. You just need to think about, what do I want? You know, you need to be able to answer the question, what does my ideal phone use look like? What do I want to be doing with my time? Because if you can't answer those questions, then you can't change your behavior. But as soon as you decide what you want, it's totally doable.
Definitely, Miss Ruby Ryba. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And can you please invite our listeners to support How to Stop Scrolling?
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel, for having me. Yes, for anyone listening that enjoyed hearing me today, if you go to howtostopscrolling.com and enter your email address, I have a 5-day series with free lessons from my book. And I'd love to see you there.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Ruby Riba because if you support her, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Ruby, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.